Welcome, everybody, to our workshop today. While we have other participants joining, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Healthy Lifestyles has going on for the month of September. We are focusing on mental health. So if you go to your Well Steps account, you will see at the very bottom under rewards, the Drive Your Intention program, and that's the name of our mental health campaign. Let's see if I can share that with you guys. Alrighty, so on your Well Steps account, you'll see this Drive Your Intention, and then we're doing a mini campaign as well. So at the very top of your Well Steps account, if you click on campaigns, it will show you the steps to how you can participate and drive your intention. And it's all about just setting an intention or a purpose for the day. So that can be personal to you. You don't need to record exactly what your intention is. You would just record that you made one for the day. We will also have this workshop recorded, and so you can tell your coworkers, or if you have a spouse or adult designee who is in the program, that they can watch this presentation for 10 points. And when you are finished watching this presentation, go to your Well Steps account and check it off so you can get points for today. We are also accepting donations to Salt Lake County's youth services for points. You can donate at youth services. There, if you click on this link right here, it actually takes you to more information about where to donate, but they are taking different items for emotional first aid kits for the youth that they see. And so a lot of this is different things that can help them cope with whatever it is that they are dealing with. If you can see this flyer, it says that they would need things like crayons, baggies, coloring books, journals, stress balls, pencils. So if you're at the dollar store and you grab an extra pair of crayons that you can donate, that would be wonderful. And you can also get points for that. And then lastly, if you complete a Mindful Monday or yoga activity that you can find on our YouTube channel, these links will take you there from your Well Steps. You can get points for that for this month as well, since it is Mental Health Month. All right. Well, I will have BreeAnn take over. She is a suicide prevention coordinator for the health department. And BreeAnn, if you can start by explaining what it is that you do for the county, and then we can just jump right into your presentation.
Yeah, so my name's BreeAnn. As the suicide prevention coordinator for the health department. So a lot of community education, trying to provide resources and education to the community. So I am going to talk today about suicide prevention awareness. Can you guys all see my PowerPoint there? Let's see. There we go. Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so just to start, I know that suicide can be a difficult topic to discuss. So if at any point during this presentation it's kind of bringing up difficult emotions or you feel like you're needing some help, definitely reach out to the people that are kind of your support network. And if needed, you can call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that's the number right there, 1-800-273-8255. So we're just going to kind of talk about how to talk to somebody about suicide and then how to connect them to resources. So if you know of somebody that you think might be thinking about suicide, it's important to ask directly about it. And you can say something like, I'm worried about you and I'm wondering if you're having thoughts of suicide or if you've thought about ending your life. So it's really important that we're direct, that we bring it up to them and we ask about it. And I know that that can feel kind of scary and overwhelming, but we'll kind of talk about some myths and facts related to suicide and how actually bringing it up is beneficial. And a lot of times people say, I don't want to plant the thought or give them the idea, but that's actually not true. So we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. So, one second. Okay, So since almost all efforts to help someone to live will be met with agreement and relief, don't hesitate to get involved or take the lead. So when you take action, you really are going to help that person have hope. And hope is really what's going to help them be able to access resources and help prevent suicide. Sorry, my computer's kind of struggling. There we go. Okay. So let's go through just some myths and facts about suicide. So just in the chat, you can write if you think this is a myth or a fact. So confronting a person about suicide will make them angry and increase the risk of suicide. Is that a myth or a fact? Okay, myth. A bunch of myths coming in. Perfect. Yeah, so that is a myth. Somebody, when they are having thoughts of suicide, they are going to be showing us warning signs that they're considering suicide. And so those warning signs, which I'll kind of talk about here in a minute too, are that person, it's kind of their cry for help, them reaching out, trying to get someone to recognize that they're not doing okay. And when you're in that place, it can be really difficult to ask for help or to tell somebody that you're thinking about suicide. And so those warning signs are kind of that person's way of saying, I'm not doing well, like somebody please notice. And so we can bring it up to the person. That's, again, it's going to help kind of relieve some of that anxiety, and it's going to help them feel hopeful. Okay, so myth or fact, if people in crisis get the help they need, they will likely never die by suicide. What do you guys think? Fact, 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 fact. Perfect. Okay, yes, this is a fact. So the statistic is actually really hopeful. So 90% of people who've attempted suicide have gone on to get help, have not gone on to die by suicide. So if we can connect people to resources, it's unlikely that they will die by suicide. Fact or myth? People with suicide-related thoughts keep their plans to themselves. What do you think? Fact, myth, 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 myth. Okay. Yeah, this is a myth. Good job. So again, people are going to be showing us these warning signs. So what are some things that we want to look for that could give us an indication that somebody might be thinking about it? We can see warning signs in a few different ways. So number one is in the talk that the language that they're using and the things that they're saying. So this can be direct, like someone saying, if such and such doesn't happen, I'm going to kill myself. But it can also be indirect as well. So this could be somebody saying something like, I'm tired of life, I just can't go on, or I won't be around much longer. Things that are a little bit more vague, but that kind of raise that red flag. You also want to pay attention to behaviors that are out of the norm for the person. This could be a sudden interest or disinterest in religion. It could be more risk taking, or somebody trying to get access to means like a gun or pills. It could be somebody putting their personal affairs in order. So just things that are kind of out of the norm for the person. You want to pay attention to mood changes as well. So you could be noticing a lot of mood changes.
Yeah, and as long as he gets in,
normally
and
mellow, kind of, not super excitable, but then they're seeming that way. All of a sudden, they're kind of seeming really elated and euphoric. That's something to pay attention to. And same thing on the other end. So if somebody is normally kind of your life of the party person and they're seeming really withdrawn and depressed, you want to pay attention to those mood changes. So really just, again, things that are out of the norm. And then what is going on in their life? What are the situations that they're experiencing? So this could be financial insecurity. This could be the loss of a loved one through death or a breakup or divorce. It could be the diagnosis of an illness, anything that could be kind of a chronic ongoing stressor or something that could be a big life event that they're experiencing. So oftentimes you'll notice more than one warning sign. They might be saying things and you can kind of check out their behaviors and what they're going through. But all of those things are going to give us an indication that they're not doing well. And that's them kind of showing us that you know, they won't keep it to themselves. Okay, so fact or myth, those who talk about suicide don't do it. What do you think here? Myth. Yeah, exactly, myth. Good job. So I hear this all the time of, oh, they're just saying that, they're trying to get attention, they wouldn't actually do it. But we need to take any talk of suicide seriously. If somebody says anything that even alludes to suicide, we need to assume that they may act on that. And the whole attention seeking kind of argument, even if somebody is not thinking about suicide and they are attention seeking, that's probably an indication that they need something, right? That they're missing something, that, you know, they're not getting the attention that they need. So regardless, even if you do think somebody might not be serious about it, we need to take it seriously and assume that they may act on it. Okay, fact or myth? The highest rate of suicide in Utah is among youth between 10 to 17. Okay, fact, myth, fact, fact. Okay, yeah, kind of some back and forth on this one. This is actually a myth. So the highest rates of suicide deaths we see in adult males. We often hear about youth dying by suicide more often, but they make up about 6% of suicide deaths in Utah. Still obviously concerning, we don't ever want to minimize that, but the highest rates of suicide deaths in Utah are adult males. So you really can make a difference. I know sometimes when somebody that we love and care about is talking about suicide, that can feel really overwhelming, and we might feel like we have a lot of pressure and we're like, oh, I don't know what to do about this, but we really can help make a difference. So oftentimes I hear the analogy of suicide being compared, having suicidal thoughts being compared to some of the emotions that you might have if you're on the top floor of a burning building. So what might you be feeling kind of in that instance? Your top floor of a burning building, how do you feel? I want to just throw some things in the chat. Hopeless, scared. I would go numb and feel panic. Absolutely. Scared, anxiety. Yeah, all of those things, right? We would be feeling so many emotions. And when we're in that situation, all I can think about is I have to get out of this fire, right? So I might see an open window and think, I don't care, I have to get out of the fire. But if we can show somebody a fire escape, a safe way to exit the fire, people will take that option. So people thinking about suicide, they don't want to die, they just don't want to be experiencing that fire anymore. And so if we can help show them the fire escape, we can connect them to resources, we really can help make a difference in them being able to deal with what they're experiencing. So let's talk about how to talk about suicide. So the language that we use matters, and the way that we ask about suicide matters. So a less helpful question would be something like, you're not suicidal, are you? What would be some concerns with asking about suicide in this way? Just throw your thoughts in the chat. It can be seen as judgmental. Shaming, absolutely. You're basically saying they should not be. Yeah, perfect. It would be easy to say no. Accusatory. Yep. Stigma on mental health. Perfect. Yeah. So a better way that we could ask that would be, you know, when people are as upset as you seem to be, they sometimes wish they were dead. I'm wondering if you're feeling that way too. So again, why? So the first example has kind of that accusatory tone. It assumes the answer of no, right? So we want to ask questions in a way that are going to get the person to talk. We're really just there to ask a question, get them talking, and then we can help connect them to services. So we don't want to shut down conversation. We want to make sure that we're asking questions that show we care. And, we kind of mentioned that shame and judgment. We want to just make sure that we have a lot of empathy in the way that we're asking as well. Just there's nothing wrong with somebody who's had thoughts of suicide, and we want to make sure that they don't feel any sort of judgment or shame around that. That it's okay that they're having those thoughts. We, of course, do not want them to act on them, but we can help connect them to help. Okay, thank you. So another way that we probably wouldn't want to ask this is you wouldn't do anything crazy, would you? Or you wouldn't do anything stupid. What's the problem with this one? A lot of kind of the same as the previous one, right? You could say, Tammy says, you just told them they're stupid. Yeah, totally. If anytime anyone says something like crazy or stupid, that's going to, again, shut down conversation. Luckily, shut them down and make them feel terrible. Yeah, absolutely. So you could say, I noticed you're giving away some of your prized possessions and wondering if you're thinking about suicide. So I like the way this one's worded a lot. I like that it's pointing out one of the warning signs. So a lot of times people will say to me, like, I don't know how to bring this up to somebody. Like, what if they're like, why are you asking me that? I think pointing out some of the things that you've noticed can be a great way to kind of like lead into you asking this question. So you can say, I've noticed you're doing A, B, and C, and I'm worried about you, and I'm wondering if you thought about ending your life. So that can kind of sometimes feel a little bit more of a gentle lead in. Evidence-based studies confirm that asking direct questions does not encourage people to attempt suicide. So again, we hear this question all the time of like, I don't want to plant the thought, but that's actually untrue. Someone's either thinking about suicide or they're not. We're not going to suddenly magically implant this thought into their head that if they're in that place they haven't thought of. So it's really going to open the door for conversation and finding help. So I want to make sure that you talk to the person alone and in a private setting where you really can kind of connect with them and help them feel supported. Okay, what about this one? Are you thinking of harming yourself? Why would this maybe be a less helpful way to ask about suicide? Any thoughts? Kind of accusing them. Easy answer, no. Okay. Not a direct question. Yes, exactly. So it's a closed question. Yes, no, not opening for discussion. Perfect. Yeah. So we could say something like when people are going through something difficult, like a divorce, they may experience suicidal thoughts. Has this happened to you? So I can feel, again, sometimes a little bit more gentle to ask about self harm, but it's important to recognize that there is a difference between self harm and suicide. There can be self harm with intent to die, and then there can be self harm with no intent to die. And so when we ask about suicide, we want to be as direct as possible because somebody could be self harming without the intent to die, without having suicidal thoughts, and vice versa. So we want to make sure that we're direct about it and that we're persistent as well. So if somebody is kind of dodging the question or they're not really giving you a straight answer, be persistent, continue asking a question. Maybe you have to reword it, or, just the other day I was kind of talking to somebody who was having thoughts of suicide, and a lot of the conversation was me asking us the same questions, but just in kind of a different way. So really, you just want to be direct. The more direct you are, the more direct they're going to feel like they can be. If you're comfortable talking about suicide and you can say suicide, like say the word suicide, that's going to help them feel safe with you and know that they can talk about it. So how do we respond? We've asked somebody about suicide and then they say yes. Then that's kind of, I know a lot of times people have this moment of like, well, I asked, now what do I do? So after someone has told you that they have had thoughts of suicide, we want to encourage them to get help. And you can do this in a few different ways. We just really want them to feel like we're with them in it though. So you can say, will you go with me to get help? Or will you work with me to stay safe until we've found some help? You can be totally honest too and saying, I'm not quite sure what to do from here, but I will help you. And can we agree to, work towards that together? So just make sure that you're providing encouragement and doing what we can to help connect them to help. So again, just ask the question. Asking shows that you care about the person. And then offer messages of hope and support. You can say things like, I care about you and I want you to get the help you need. Or thank you for being honest with me. I know this is hard to talk about. Just statements of empathy that just show, I'm so sorry you're experiencing this. This must be really difficult. Like, I want to help. I want you to be safe. I'm glad you told me, and let's explore some options together. So just really validating that it's okay that they've thought these things, but we want to connect them to help. So how to access resources. So if you are concerned that somebody is going to take action on their thoughts, we need to get them immediate help. So this is when we would call 911 and request emergency services. You can ask for a crisis intervention trained officer to come. So you can say, I need a CIT officer to come. And they send an officer who has training in a mental health crisis. And, I've had to call, 911 before and request that. And the officer who showed up was extremely empathetic, very understanding, and was very good to help this person that I was interacting with. So if you're concerned about somebody taking immediate action, we need to get them help right then. But if, they said, I'm having thoughts of suicide, I'm not going to act, right now, then we can access some of these different resources. So the Suicide Prevention Lifeline is one of the best resources. You can call anytime and talk to somebody who is trained to work somebody through a suicidal crisis. So that number is 1-800-273-TALK or 8255. And our lifeline in Utah is run through UNI. And we also have this really awesome resource called MCOT, or the Mobile Crisis Outreach Team. So this is where somebody can come to wherever you are at and kind of work with you in that moment to kind of work you through the crisis. So you can access MCOT through the Lifeline. The SafeUT app is a really great resource as well. This is more for teens and parents, or like students and parents, and then educators as well. So SafeUT is an app that it's connected to kids' schools. So say I went to Brighton High School, so I could go in and say I'm at Brighton, and I'm concerned about my friend. I'm going to go in and submit a tip. So I'm concerned about my friend. I'm thinking they might have thoughts of suicide. And then SafeUT helps route that back to wherever it needs to go. So if the school needs to respond, it will respond. If it needs immediate help, they can respond. So there was somebody, a youth who had posted on social media that, like, kind of his final goodbye, and a bunch of his friends submitted a tip on SafeUT, and within a few minutes, they had a police officer at his home. And so SafeUT is a really great resource. It's not just for suicide tips or crisis help. You can submit tips about bullying or threats against the school, anything like that. But you can also talk with it. There's like a button on there that you can push that says like talk with a crisis counselor as well. So you can chat with someone on there. The Trevor Project, this is a lifeline for LGBTQ youth. So a really great resource for people in that population. And then Intermountain has the Behavioral Health Access Center at LDS Hospital. So that's open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can call this number, or you can just show up there. And it's a behavioral health unit, so it's going to be a better option than taking somebody to the ER, because they're going to be more trained in mental health crises. You can always check with your health insurance provider and see what is covered as far as mental health goes with health insurance. And then there's a crisis text line where you can chat with somebody just through texting at 741-741. So we also want to look at the environment that a person is in and create a safe environment. So if somebody is having thoughts of suicide, we need to reduce access to any type of means, particularly access to guns. Guns are the most lethal means, and most people who use a gun in a suicide attempt do not survive. So we want to make sure that if someone's at risk, we store their guns away from the individual, preferably out of the house until the person has recovered. So you can, in Utah, it's allowed that you can like give your gun to somebody else, and like a neighbor or friend, something like that, for them to hold on to. We also have this really great resource. It's called the Safe Harbor Law, where you can call your local police department and then go take your firearms there for safekeeping. You just have to sign them off, and then I think they do it. I think it's a 72-hour hold. But then after that point, you can go back and pick your guns up at any point. And then just make sure, generally speaking, that firearms are locked, that they are in a safe, or you have a gun lock on them. Just providing extra space and time between access to a means. I've heard of people who have put their like gun safe key in a cup of water and then will freeze the water. Or I've heard of people who take apart their firearms so that, you know, it would take more time. So again, we just really want to create time and space. The same thing goes with medications as well. If there are medications in your home, I would suggest you get rid of any medications in your home. There's, you know, prescription drop-off boxes throughout the county that you can access. So I would suggest just reducing access to any type of means, looking at what's in your home, and then help secure those away from the person at risk. So good to educate yourselves more. If you want to learn more about suicide prevention, you can always take a QPR or question, persuade, refer training. Goes into a little bit more depth on a lot of the things that we've talked about today. There's also mental health first aid trainings as well. And these are available across the state. So you can get on liveonutah.org. And there's a tab on there that has classes, so you can access those. I know with COVID, a lot of these classes have been kind of delayed or have gone virtual, but there are still options. So if you're interested in that, check out liveonutah.org. So kind of some next steps. So lock up guns, look at means in your home, take a class or talk to a healthcare professional if you or someone that you know needs resources. I suggest if you're having a lot of anxiety or depression, or you're feeling really overwhelmed, access resources before it gets to a point where you're feeling so overwhelmed that it's causing you to have thoughts of suicide. Start a conversation. I know it can be scary, but just having that moment of bravery and starting the conversation is really important. And I know I've had to have these conversations quite a few times, and the initial asking the question can feel kind of, a little bit scary, but anytime I've had these conversations, it's always been a connecting conversation. We've been able to get somebody help. And then form a connection. I think this is so important, that oftentimes when people are having thoughts of suicide, they're feeling very isolated and very alone. So look out for the people around you, the people you care about. Think about the people who may be a little bit more isolated because of COVID, and reach out to those people and try and help keep that connectedness going. So talking about suicide may create fear and anxiety for you. However, talking about suicide can also save lives. Be brave, be a friend, ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? And connect the people you care about with resources. And then these are just some resources. We went over some of these, but I did want to point out a few different trainings that you can do, or resources. So there is core competencies in suicide prevention and treatment. That's more for healthcare type workers. And then counseling on access to lethal means training as well. So if you're not quite sure how to talk to somebody about maybe removing their firearms from the home, this is a great training that you can take. Some of the short-term help we talked about, most of those, and then the community resources. I'm sure most of you have heard of AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. This month they're doing a virtual walk. I don't know the dates of them, but I can get that to Sadie if she wants to get that out. But AFSP is a great resource that can help families who have lost someone to suicide or people who have attempted suicide. Awesome resource. NAMI is another phenomenal resource. It's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So they have classes that you can take for both people experiencing mental illnesses and then for family members of people experiencing mental illnesses. They've moved all of these virtually as well. So really awesome resource that you can kind of tap into anytime. And then I did want to point out too, liveonutah.org. I kind of mentioned that before in finding classes, but this website was created by the Utah Suicide Prevention Coalition. And this is just basically a hub of information on suicide prevention. So there's resources for if you're considering suicide, there's resources on how to help somebody, grief support, all sorts of different things. So if you have any questions about suicide prevention, this is a great resource to access. So that kind of covers what I wanted to talk about. I know we've got quite a bit of time. I was hoping to leave a bit of time for questions. So I don't know how best to do kind of a Q&A, but if we want to do the chat or if we want to unmute people, but I'd love to kind of spend the next kind of 20 minutes answering questions.
Yeah, I think you can either put it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself if that's easier. But my first question for you, BreeAnn, is what does treatment look like for somebody who may have gone through a suicide attempt?
Yeah, let me just stop sharing my screen really quick. Yeah, that's a great question. So it's going to be really dependent on the person. So I would just suggest getting in and talking to somebody who is trained to work with somebody after an attempt or after somebody's had thoughts. Treatment can look different. It could include medication if needed. It could include behavioral therapies. But I think it's really important that we be open to therapy and access those resources when we need them. Did that answer that question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And while people are putting their question in the chat box, I want to remind them that we actually have some extra gun locks at our Healthy Lifestyles office. So if you are interested, you can email us at myhealthylifestyles@slco.org and we can mail those to your office as well if you need a gun lock.
Yeah, and I also have Dispose RX. So this is a really cool thing that you can, it's basically like a packet that you put into a pill bottle with some water and then you shake it up and it makes it safe to throw away. So I could get a bunch of those to Sadie as well if anyone's interested in those.
Yeah, and it looks like there's a lot of free locks at the library as well. People have been putting in the chat box. So that's awesome. Looks like there's resources in every which direction, which is wonderful. I do have more questions for you personally if people aren't going to chime in. So what can you tell us about suicide contagion? Or people have said that suicide could be contagious. Is this a myth or a fact?
Yeah, so that's actually true. This comes a lot, we talk about this a lot when it comes to reporting on suicide. So 13 reasons why would be a good example of this. There's safe media guidelines that should be followed when talking about suicide or, showing suicide in a TV show, things like that. And so, like that particular show, there were quite a few things in there that would have gone against safe guidelines for the media. They showed a suicide. They kind of talked about, like in there wasn't a lot of help for the girl who was having suicidal thoughts, things like that. So, Robin Williams is another example of that. Suicides of males his age increased dramatically right after he died. A lot of that due to unsafe reporting. So when we talk about suicide, especially when we're reporting on it or in the media, we want to make sure that we're not what's the word? Like kind of glorifying it, or we don't want to give description on how a person died or things like that. So we want to make sure that we're providing resources and help and hope instead of kind of romanticizing that this person is now free from all their pain. We want to make sure that we're helping other people recognize that this person was struggling and there are resources that could help if somebody else is feeling that way as well.
Excellent. And we have a question from Josh. He said, you mentioned great ways to help. Sorry, I just lost it. Okay. To help someone open up about their thoughts of suicide, do you have recommendations on how to continue the conversation?
Yeah, so that's a great question. One of my really good friends a few years back, we had the conversation, she said she was having thoughts of suicide. And so we talked about it that day, obviously, and tried to connect her to help, but we made it kind of an ongoing conversation. So I would just ask her, how are you feeling? Are you having, kind of some of those thoughts today, or are you, feeling okay? And so I would just regularly check in on her and make sure that she was still doing okay, that she was still accessing the resources that we had talked about, and that she was taking steps to kind of help. So I think it's just important to just continue to check in with the person, see how they're doing, ask how you can help them. What would be ways that I can help you through this process? Do you want me to go to an appointment with you? Do you want me to make an appointment for you? Do you want me to ask you about it? Do you want me to, just kind of talk to the person of what would be the most helpful for them? But I would just suggest continuing to ask them how they're feeling. Even when things seem like they're getting better, just let them know I'm still here for you if you're, continuing to have those thoughts.
Excellent. And then the next question is, what options do family members have when the person experiencing the suicidal thoughts is refusing help?
Okay, that's it. Yeah, that's a good question as well. So if somebody is in immediate danger, if they're going to act, you can again call the police. They can. It's obviously this isn't ideal, right? But they can pink sheet somebody. So if they're concerned that somebody may act, that moment or whatever, they can require them to go to um, the emergency room or to uni. The uni has a behavioral health unit as well. So that may be an option if you're concerned that somebody is going to act now. But I would also ask the person why won't they get help? What is the concerns there? And see if you can kind of work them through some of those barriers. Is it a money issue? Is it they're not sure who to talk to? Is it kind of just, some shame? What are those things that are barriers for that person, and how can we work through them? So I would just continue. Again, I think conversation is going to be your most valuable tool of just asking them what are ways that we can do to help. And then I would also look into NAMI as well, because they have, again, I think I mentioned before, but they have resources for family members of people who are experiencing mental illnesses. So if somebody is experiencing a mental illness and having thoughts of suicide and not willing to accept help, they may be able to kind of help you kind of come up with some solutions for that. But I also do want to mention too that we can do everything that we can, but we can't force a person to get help, right? So at some point they need to be able to accept that. So I would do what you can, but just keep in mind that they still have their choice, right? And just to be gentle with ourselves, because I know sometimes, like I've had experiences in the past where I just feel so much pressure and I feel like it's all on me, but the person isn't really willing to get help. And so just making sure that we're gentle with ourselves of it, it's them as well. They need to be willing to do that as well. Any other questions?
Does a person who has the thoughts of suicide ever overcome it?
Yeah, so most people won't have chronic thoughts of suicide. There are going to be people who do, who may have thoughts of suicide and then they're okay for a while and they have thoughts of suicide again. But you know, most people, if we can again get people to help, where we can help them learn coping strategies and build kind of that toolbox of mental health resources for somebody, it can kind of help them from getting to the point where they're having suicidal thoughts in the future. So that's getting that help is really just going to be so important. What types of things are in that toolbox? That's a good question. So coping strategies is going to be a huge one. When somebody is having thoughts of suicide and kind of chronically having thoughts of suicide, oftentimes mental health counselors or therapists will create a safety plan with that person. So that would be identifying people that they could talk to that could help, identifying things that they can do. So like if I'm starting to have these thoughts, then I'm going to go do these three things. And if those three things don't help, then we're going to talk to these three people and kind of, go through that safety plan. Medication may be another thing that may be in that toolbox of, sometimes we just may have something that we need a little bit of medication to help kind of balance us out, and that's totally fine. I think connectedness as well, making sure that we're building healthy relationships where we feel supported and we're able to communicate what we need. Those are kind of just some of the things off the top of my head. And I think just being willing to access resources and, going to therapy, things like that, if we're kind of in that place. Other questions?
And BreeAnn, what is something we can do in our everyday lives to break this stigma around mental health?
Yeah, I think it's important that we just talk about it. I know every single one of us have had mental health challenges at some point. And oftentimes when I'm in a conversation with people, I'll just mention something that I've experienced. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, me too. So I think just talking about it and making it normal, because it is normal. We all experience mental health challenges. And so I think that is probably the best way that we can help kind of destigmatize it. I think the language that we use as well. So saying something like somebody who is experiencing suicidal thoughts instead of saying a suicidal person, right? Because there's more to a person than just the thoughts that they're having. Or saying somebody who's died by suicide instead of committed suicide. People commit crimes, commit sin, right? So we don't want to tie those things together. Saying a successful suicide, we don't want to say that. We'd want to say somebody died by suicide. It's never going to be a success when we've lost someone. So just kind of thinking about the way that we talk about suicide and mental health can kind of help reduce that stigma as well.
And then another question I had for you is if we see something on social media, either a post or a video where somebody is using the language that they may be experiencing suicidal thoughts or thinking about suicide, what would you do for somebody else if it's a stranger or an acquaintance or coworker or somebody that you're not necessarily feel that comfortable directly asking if they are experiencing those thoughts?
Yeah, so if there's someone that maybe you see on social media that's more of an acquaintance, you're not quite sure, but you're concerned about them. but you don't feel like you have the relationship with that person to ask about it, I would try and get somebody who does have that relationship to ask them about it. So, say my coworker who I kind of like don't really know very well, I see something on social media and I know that they're really good friends with this other person I work with, I may go talk to the other person and say, hey, I saw that so and so put this on social media. I'm concerned about them. I don't know that I have the relationship with them to ask about this. Is there any way you would be willing to? So I would try that, just try and get them somebody else who may be closer with them. If it's somebody that you don't know, you can always put resources in comments, right? So you can say, you know, I'm worried about you. Have you considered calling the lifeline and then give the lifeline number? Or you can, I'm pretty sure on a lot of these social media platforms, you can kind of report a post if there's concern that somebody may be going to harm themselves. Um, so you can report it on the social media platform as well. And I think they respond, but I would just do what you can to provide resources as much as you can. If that's links in a comment, if that's like a private message to the person, if it's trying to get somebody else to ask them about it. But I would do what you can to try and get them resources. Any other questions or thoughts that anybody has?
And feel free to unmute if you would like. Oh, they're asking about link to the slides and resources. I can definitely make a list of all the resources BreeAnn has touched on. Would you be comfortable sharing your slides, BreeAnn?
I I need to double check if I can share the slides. I do know that there is a Intermountain, because this is an Intermountains presentation. They do have a link to like a self-paced version of this basically, so we can definitely send that out.
Okay, perfect. And I can email that to everybody. And then I can also include information about the gun locks and the prescription collection that we talked about and the Salt Lake County's Employee Assistance Program, the different counseling and mental health resources that they offer as well. And then our September newsletter that is on our Healthy Lifestyles website also has lots of different resources on there as well. So I'll include all of that, but if you need something right away, you can go to our website right now and find that. But looks like we don't have any other questions. That was an excellent presentation, BreeAnn. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And if you missed at the very beginning, we mentioned that you get your points today by going into your WellSteps account and then going to rewards at the top, scroll down, and at the bottom it will have that you participated in the workshop. But thank you all for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you at the next workshop. And I hope you're seeing all the thank yous, BreeAnn.
I am. Thanks. That was
Good.
good.